there are people in the media like Jemele Hill with this tweet. Caitlin Clark is expected to receive a signature shoe from Nike. And then here would be the list of active WNBA players with a current signature shoe. And that's Caitlin Clark. And then what's this? Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart. And I guess they're white. And now, mind you, there are other WNBA players, maybe not at this very moment, but like one that just retired like last year, Candace Parker or whatever, who has her own shoe. She's a black woman. Because the insinuation here is, of course, that these are 3 white women that have their signature shoe. And so Jemele Hill, known non-liker of this type of stuff, goes, A'ja Wilson, who is a 2-time league MVP, 2-time WNBA champion, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, a Finals MVP, and 5-time WNBA star, and a best-selling author, is probably somewhere like, and then it's just a Popeyes employee just looking fed up with life. Hey, there's this black player who has all these accolades in the WNBA, and she doesn't have her shoe. There are other black women in the league that have their own signature shoes. Maybe they don't currently play at this very exact moment, but it's not a thing that hasn't been seen before. Personally, I was unaware of any of these shoes. I'm not a big shoe guy in general. And especially not a big women's basketball signature shoe guy. So I wouldn't know either way. But the point is that it doesn't take much for very vocal people in the public conversation to immediately revert to the race angle. These are the types of things you say when you're trying to insinuate that the fact that Caitlin Clark has a shoe and this other woman doesn't must be because of racial bias. Well, Jemele, unfortunately, the fact that you have to list all of A'ja Wilson's accolades because people don't know them is proving the point of why she doesn't have a signature shoe. That's not to take anything away from A'ja Wilson. I believe it's pronounced A'ja. Maybe it's Aja, whatever. It's A''J''A. I've never seen that spelling in the wild before, so I could be wrong. Could be Aja, maybe. Didn't Steely Dan have a album, A''J''A, and it was either Asia or Aja? I didn't even look into the pronunciation of that, so I don't know. I'm going to go with A'ja. But regardless, the point stands. That's how business works. The fact that Nike did not go out of their way to endorse a signature A'ja Wilson shoe probably has a lot to do with the fact that most people don't know who A'ja Wilson is, and therefore it probably wouldn't be a very lucrative endorsement. And that's no offense to A'ja Wilson, but that's just how business works. Unfortunately, that's kind of how it works. Okay? The most popular shoe, Jemele Hill, probably just in general, the most popular shoe just so happens to be a signature shoe of a basketball player, and he's a black guy. Shocker, I know. Because when you think of basketball and who gets the most props and accolades and cheers and whatever in sports, you think of white guys, for sure. Of course, when you think basketball, you think white guys. But shockingly enough, the Air Jordan, named after the well-known Michael Jordan, is a signature shoe endorsed by a black man. And they sell off the charts, and they're kind of what started the whole signature shoe thing in general, I feel like, or at least took it to the next level. So if your argument is that shoe companies are not giving out shoe endorsements to black players and instead divvying them out to random white players, I don't think that's the case. I don't. Michael Jordan, an extremely popular basketball player, changed the game, the most, prolific basketball player of all time, arguably, and he has a shoe because it sells money. Then you have one of the worst basketball players known to man, me, Jimmy Selesky, and it should come as no surprise that there is no such thing as the Air Jimmy Seleskys, because no one, and I mean no one, including myself, would wear them. And that's just how it is. Now, I'm not comparing A'ja Wilson's basketball talent to mine. A'ja Wilson would mop me up in a one-on-one. Most people could. That jar of mixed nuts over there probably has a fighting chance against me on a bad day. I hope someday A'ja Wilson does get a shoe. But I don't think that the reason she doesn't is because she's black. And I don't know if Jemele is just unaware of black players who have signature shoes and how much media time and flowers from everyone black players get in the NBA. I don't know if she's unaware of that. I'm sure she is aware of that. So maybe this is specific to female players. Maybe she thinks that it's just specifically black women that are being overlooked, in which case, okay, I don't know. It's tough to keep up at this point. And it shows the narrow-mindedness of your worldview. It shows that you're incapable, or in the name of her podcast, unbothered. Whoever uses the term unbothered bothers me. I hate when people try to portray that aura like they just don't give a fuck. I don't like a I don't give a fuck type of person. You should give a fuck to some degree. You should be a little bit bothered. I'm not saying let other people control what you think, say, and do, but you should have some consideration for the people around you and how you're affecting them. You should not be unbothered. And also, if you have to go out of your way to talk about how much things don't bother you, you're probably a little bit bothered. Because actual unbothered people are not even bothered enough to tell you that they're unbothered. I would be willing to bet that I am more unbothered than Jemele Hill. And my show is called Live from the Studio. Doesn't even allude or mention any level of botherarity in my life. Because I didn't see it necessary to name my show after my level of botheredness. Probably because I'm not that bothered, Jemele. But Jemele is unbothered to perceive of this phenomenon as anything other than, I guess, what she thinks most things are, which is racist. Just racist. Here's a woman on The View saying something similar, but she just says it right out the gate. I don't even know this woman's name. I'll look it up during the playtime.
Said, I do think that there is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. There is a thing called tall privilege. And we have to acknowledge that. And so the part of it is about race, because if you think about the Brittany Griners of the world, you know, why did she have to go to play in Russia?
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay, not because she was black, but because they didn't believe in the WNBA.
This is part of my point. So now, you know, Caitlin Clark is bringing this money, these sponsorships, we hope, into the league, and other players will benefit from it. But I do think that she is more relatable to more people because she's white, because she's attractive. And unfortunately, there still is that stigma of against the LGBTQ plus community. 70% of the WNBA is black. A third of the players are in the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to do something about that stigma in this country. I think that people have a problem with basketball playing women that are lesbians. Who cares? They are great athletes.
Well, you can't tell a lesbian unless she tells you she's a lesbian. Well, it's not like you look.
I think that was definitely a moment. By the way, that was Sunny Hostin. I looked that up during the video as well. I think that was a moment where normally the audience would be like, yes, yes. But it was like such a, like, especially the last part. People have a problem with the fact that female basketball players are lesbians. No, what? First of all, no offense to women's sports, because I know everyone watches them now, according to that chick and her shirt on my Instagram. But no one cares enough about women's sports generally, even at this point, to even care what orientation they are sexually. It's kind of like been a running joke that chicks who play softball are lesbians. No one's like watching or not watching the games based on that. No one's like, dude, I tell you what, normally I would sit down all day and just crack a cold with the boys and watch the women's college softball finals. But I don't know, something about the fact that these chicks are lesbians, I just can't get behind it. No one says that. That's not a thing. We all know that 30% of the WNBA are part of the LGBT community. T is the most interesting. But they're lesbians. We get it. Everybody knows that. In fact, 30% actually sounds like a low estimate to me. I was expecting higher. That's not why. She goes right out and says it, that, it's white, pretty privilege. And you know what? I'm going to do something people don't expect me to do here. Or I'm going to do something that people don't expect a person who's been saying what I've been saying this entire time to say. And I will say this. There probably is an element. In fact, there definitely is an element to this that has to do with Caitlin Clark being white. I said it. There is. There just is. There's a reason why Larry Bird was called the Great White Hope. And I'll tell you what that reason is, and I'll tell you why it's not that bad of a thing. And I'll also tell you why it's not the biggest thing. Because when I say that that is part of it, I didn't say the big part of it. I didn't say a major part of it. I just said there is a part of it that has to do with that. Okay? When Jeremy Lin went off for that season and scored like the crazy amount of points and just was going crazy, and they had that whole Linsanity phenomenon, it was this Chinese American guy. I guess he was Chinese. I don't know. Maybe that's me being racist again. Who was just killing it in the NBA. And that's something you don't see. I'm sorry. Yao Ming was like 7'8", freak, like genetically engineered by the Chinese government. I think they literally took a woman from the women's national basketball team and a man from the men's national, like the two tallest people in China, and like bred them together and created Yao Ming. I think I heard that. I don't know. That's probably completely not true. Something went on there. But regardless, Yao Ming wasn't exactly who you would think of as a standout, phenomenal basketball player that people go crazy to watch. Jeremy Lin was this like regular Asian guy size Asian guy who was just killing it for a while. And all of a sudden, all these Asian people are New York Knicks fans, showing up, holding up faces of what all appeared to be the same face. So it was either that they were all holding up Jeremy Lin signs or just all holding up pictures of themselves. And I was like, are they holding up the same guy? Sorry, I'm being racist again. I don't mean to do that. What I mean to do is say that in the same way that when you hear a lot of non-white communities reference the idea of you have to see it to be it. And the reason why you don't see as many black women in structural engineering is because they just don't grow up seeing a lot of black women setting that example. You don't see a lot of black women, and therefore you don't see a lot of black women because these black girls aren't growing up having that example set for them. And a lot of that is bullshit, but also some of that is true. You know, it mainly just has to do with like, it's not something you're ever thought to consider. It's not that like you don't think you can do it. That's silly to me. Like if you don't think you can do something or you do think you can do something, you're probably right. It's a good saying and it's a good way to live by. So something as silly as that, just looking around and noticing that you don't see that many other black women in your structural engineering class. More so, it's not a common pathway that you're led down. and there are other things, and that has to do with cultural things and all kinds of different stuff. So there's a lot to it. But I will admit, in the same way that Asian people got super fucking stoked to see an Asian guy killing it in basketball, that they've never really get to see that ever. And nobody saw a problem with that. Nobody was like, look at these racist pieces of shit. Everybody was like, I mean, dude, the New York Knicks are like, they have a whole new fan base now. Chinese people like basketball now. And everybody was like, that's awesome. But for whatever reason, if there happens to be a white guy that's killing it, if there happens to be a guy like Luka Doncic, who is one of the best players in the league right now, playing in the championship this week with his team, and then there happens to be another guy, Nikola Jokic, who is also one of the most dominant players in the league, also a white guy. And white guys are like, that's pretty dope, I'm not going to lie. It is kind of neat. It's kind of sick that like Luka's out there killing him. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's kind of sweet. Okay? Go fuck yourself. It's kind of sweet. What is the problem with that? You never see it. It's not that I don't like black basketball players. But the fact that people do get stoked when they see a white guy killing it in the NBA is a testament to how dominant black people are at basketball. It's actually a compliment that people get that stoked to see a white guy do well. It's a compliment, black people. Don't you know a compliment when you see one? Does anyone get stoked when they see a great white hockey player? No, they don't. In fact, they find it very intriguing and cool when you see a great black hockey player, because you don't see that many black guys in the NHL. So it's cool when you do. This is called how the brain works. So yes, it is kind of cool that the best basketball player in women's college history happens to be a completely average-looking, unassuming white chick named Caitlyn. And that represents about 10% of why she's so popular. And the other 90% comprises the fact that she's the best college basketball player in the history of women's basketball. That's the main thing. And now that I've admitted the potential white racist angle of this, which is that, yes, I, as the official Lorax for the whites, I speak for the whites, I will come out and say what none of them seem to want to admit, which is, it is pretty dope that Caitlin Clark is white. It's dope. It's dope. Get over it. It's fine. Black people think it's pretty dope that Lamar Jackson is black. Why? Because quarterback is historically thought of as a position that's a white guy position. And so when you see a black guy dominating that position, it's cool. So now you can see where I'm drawing the train into the station of this conversation, which is the actual double standard in this society. And this comes back, I was reminded of this, and this is really what spurred me to do this entire episode at all. Because the original tweet I came across on X is from Hoops, at HoopMixOnly, and it's a picture of Caitlin Clark battling up against this other woman. And the caption is, "The racism Caitlin Clark is dealing with is unacceptable and has no place in sports." And this is quote tweeted by a guy who says, "A lot of y'all don't actually know what the definition of racism is, and that's very concerning." And here's what he meant by that. Because those of you that are in the know, you know that the definition of racism, apparently, according to many people, they decided for themselves Because, real quick, let's look at the actual definition of racism, and it's exactly what you would think it would be. This is racism. Noun. The belief that race accounts for differences in human character or ability, and that a particular race is superior to others. Discrimination or prejudice based on race. The belief that each race has distinct and intrinsic attributes. The belief that one race is superior to all others. Prejudice or discrimination based upon race. Discriminatory or abusive behavior towards members of another race. And finally, the prejudice that members of one race are intrinsically superior to members of other races. So that's 7 different ways to say the same exact fucking thing. Now, that's what you think of when you think of racism if you're a normal person. Sexism is discrimination or prejudice based off sex. Ageism is discrimination or prejudice based off age. Ableism, blank, 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 whatever. Racism must be discrimination or prejudice based off race, which is exactly what the dictionary definition of racism is. However, there's a new definition of racism that's been sweeping the nation for the past couple decades. A made-up definition of racism that, interestingly enough, because I don't use Google anymore, exactly because of examples like we're about to see. And this isn't even that blatant, but it is an example. Because we just looked at the search results on DuckDuckGo, which is a private search engine, not, beholden to all these other ads and different algorithms and shit prioritizing this over this and blah, 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 blah. And you just got the actual definition of racism, the definition we all know to be true. But when you type it into Google, they always try to squeeze in a little something extra. And when you type it into Google, this comes from the Oxford Dictionary. And it says prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group. Okay, stop. Wait, no, they're not done. Typically one that is a minority or marginalized. And why do I focus on that? Because that's not that egregious. But there is a definition of racism that is becoming increasingly popular, which says that racism is power plus prejudice, meaning that it's not enough to simply hold a discriminatory or prejudiced belief towards another person of another race. That in order to truly be classified as racist by definition, their definition, the perpetrator of this discriminatory or prejudiced thought based off race must also be of a race that has historical, institutional, systemic power. So in the case of America, that would be white people. You may have heard people say the phrase, black people can't be racist, and thought, what does that mean? Because you understand racism to be what it is, which is when someone is being racist. But if you ask certain people, including what Google really kind of wants you to think, because you type it in to Wikipedia and they bring up the idea, this stipulative definition, which is kind of a definition that's not the official one, but the assumed one that's growing in popularity, is just that. That basically we've created or are creating a new definition of racism that precludes all other races except for white people in America of possibly being racist. See, a black person can't be racist by this new definition because black people are not in a position in America of historical power. They are a historically marginalized group, and therefore it's not possible for them to be racist because racism equals power plus prejudice. So if there's no institutional historical power, then it's just prejudice, which is silly if you think about it, because now we don't have a word for when a person who's not white is racist. There's just no word for that. No, that's just called being prejudiced. No, prejudice is a much more generic term. Prejudice could be about anything, not race. Prejudice is any time you prejudge something or someone. That's prejudice. Racism is a form of prejudice, but it's a specific form of prejudice based off race. What they want you to believe is that racism is actually a system where the ideas of supremacy of one race are institutionalized into the government and the society itself. And so racism is actually the institution itself. And so therefore, if you're not of a group that's been able to institutionalize their racism, then it's not possible for them to be racist. But here's a problem. I would call that systemic racism or institutional racism. That's why we have words, guys, because you have an idea like prejudice, which is just the prejudgment of something or someone. Then you get a more specific term like racism, which is prejudice, but based off race. You could be prejudiced based off sex. That would be sexism. Again, you could be prejudiced based off age. That would be ageism or ableism or any of these other things you can think of. Those are different forms of prejudice. And then within racism, you have different forms of racism. You just have the standard racism, which is just prejudice based off race that can be exhibited by any person. Then you might have systemic racism, which is the institutionalization of racist beliefs into our laws and systems. That would be systemic or institutionalized racism. And that's why we have words, so that you can distinguish between all these different things. But what they want to do is say, no. We're just going to make racism this one instance of racism, systemic racism, and we're going to make that mean what racism means. So now we don't have a word anymore for just when someone's being racist. And we did that on purpose because the narrative we're trying to create is that only white people can be racist. And so by changing the definition conveniently so that only white people meet those parameters, we have, by definition, made it such that only white people can be racist. So now when a black person walks around holding racist beliefs towards white people or any other race, or when Chinese people do, or Indian people, or Middle East, any group of people, when any other person who's not white has blatantly racist beliefs, thoughts, or says things or acts out certain things, guys, we don't have a word for that. That's just, they were just really prejudiced. They weren't racist. They can't be racist. I was downtown and, like actually downtown Baltimore, not like just in the city. I was in downtown Baltimore, which is a shitty part of town, unfortunately, downtown. And I was getting like fried flounder or something classic down there, chicken box or something. And this woman, black woman, walks off the street and gets in some type of altercation with the Middle Eastern guy behind the counter, Indian, I don't know what he was. And she's walking out the store, Arabs, we don't like them Arabs around here. You can get up and leave, like just screaming shit, like screaming the type of shit that you would expect in like Remember the Titans movie. What are you doing around here, boy? Like she was screaming that, but it just it hits different when you hear like a black woman saying it. It hits different because you don't think the same way about it. It's like, okay, she was clearly being inappropriate, but if I were to start screaming shit like that, I guarantee you somebody would have fucking knocked me out. Like, people would be like, what the fuck? But when it's a black woman, it's like, she's a black woman, she can't be racist. I remember thinking, it's a good thing she can't be racist, because otherwise I'd say this is pretty racist. I was playing a gig at a place right in Towson, a nice place, tablecloth dining, and a group of black women around my age, younger ladies, sitting at the bar, very nice, very well dressed, just having a normal girl conversation about guys, talking about, I was talking to him for a while, but he was this and that, whatever. And one of them is talking about a guy, and she's like, yeah, I don't know, like, I know he used to date that white girl before, and like, I don't know, I just wasn't into it. Like, once I found out he dated white chicks, I wasn't trying to fuck with him. And they weren't like whispering this. They were saying it like openly at the bar, people all around, other black people, other white people, bartenders, me. I'm standing on the other side of the room playing music, and I overheard this conversation. And there was not any level of feeling like, is this something I should be saying where people can overhear me? It's not a crazy sentiment. I know that exists. That does exist. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but people think like that. You know, guy, oh shit, she used to date a black guy. I don't know. Fuck. Like, if I'm being real, those are things, and white and black guys think the same thing about girls who date a white. It goes all around. And these black chicks were saying the same thing. You know, this guy dated a white girl and, you know, whatever. So it's a perfectly normal conversation if we're being real. But not something that specifically a white guy would feel comfortable. That's like a group chat conversation. That's like a in somebody's apartment conversation. Or if you must say it at the bar, it's like, yeah, dude, honestly, I don't know. Her last boyfriend was a fucking black guy. I was like, whatever. That's something, that's how a white guy would say that. Why? Because it's literally not socially acceptable for white people to have any type of belief like that whatsoever, because that's racist. But it is so ingrained in our culture that the standard of racist that a black person can be towards white people or any other group, basically the standard of racist that any other group of people can be towards any other group, was put on clear display in the observation of 3 or 4 completely normal, regular black women, classy. They weren't out of pocket. They weren't acting crazy. They were just normal black women that felt absolutely no ways about saying that they didn't fuck with the fact that this guy used to date white bitches. It was just completely par for the course. They didn't even see how it could possibly be interpreted as racist, because we don't have a society that makes you think that. It's just normalized. It's normal to be kind of racist towards white people. It's not seen in the same way. And you can sit here and again, you can cap all you want. But the reality is, the level of social acceptability for being racist as a white person versus being racist as a black person is different, okay? I'm a white guy. I can speak from my side of the equation. I know that there's only very specific white people that you can say even like semi-racially humorous stuff. Anything like like a race. I was at a bar and this girl like told a guy to buzz off because he told her a kind of racist joke. Like at a bar. She's like, yeah, I just told him to get the fuck out of my face. I don't fuck with that. It's like, I said to her, I was like, so I guess you don't want to hear mine? Like, you know, like, who doesn't have a couple funny racist jokes? Like, just normal, not like fucking putting on a KKK meeting, but like, even like casual humor. There are certain white people that just will not tolerate it. They won't even hang out with you. You're not invited to the party. You're not invited to the cookout. And you actually have to be very selective, even within your white friends, which ones you can say like certain things around or make certain points. That's just true. I cannot imagine going to a black cookout and other black people are like, yo, we're not inviting him over. He is racist against white people. You know, I don't fuck with racism. Now, I understand that there are black people that are just annoying. The Imhoteps or whatever, the black Israelites, where other regular black people are like, all right, he's just obnoxious. He's annoying me. I'm not trying to hear about how we're that real Jews or whatever, dude. You're crazy. There's that. But there's not like the social stigma of like, you're racist. It doesn't exist in the black community. It doesn't. I kind of feel like it doesn't. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I just kind of feel like it doesn't. And because it doesn't, at least anywhere close to the level of white people where we actually hold each other accountable for our racism, it shows on day-to-day levels. Here's an example if you don't believe me. And this, I'll close out the episode with this example because this happened last season. And we mentioned Luka Doncic earlier, and this actually involves him and a player, Montrezl Harrell, I don't fucking know. Jesus Christ. And he calls, in the middle of a game, he calls Luka Doncic, a white guy, a bitch-ass white boy. And let's take a look at this.
Clippers a stifling.
All right, so he passes the ball
top 5 defensive
right here.
rating in the NBA this
gets
year.
the ball. That's
nice catch by
Harrell.
Harrell. He's in traffic.
Makes a
Bullies his way
bucket.
in. Man, was that a strong bucket
Pass
by
Doncic.
Montrezl Harrell.
Bitch ass white
said
boy.
in game 2 that I don't feel that players and
So you don't hear the audio there, but there's no debate that that's what he said. He admits that he said that. He looks directly at Luka Doncic in the middle of a game on national television and says, bitch ass white boy, after making a shot past him. And there's nothing in the way he grew up that makes him think maybe he shouldn't say that? Can you imagine if Luka Doncic made a shot on Montrezl Harrell, or whatever his name is, and while backpedaling to his side of the court to play defense, says, black ass bitch, or whatever the equivalent would be. Bitch ass black boy doesn't sound right. Black boy sounds stupid. White boy sounds cool. So it wouldn't be bitch ass black boy. It would be something, the equivalent of that. Get your black ass out of here. Something like that. Something a white guy would say. Dude, he would probably never play again. He would probably, fuck getting fined, fuck getting ejected from the game, fuck the season. I think in very realistic ways, if he said something that blatantly racist in the middle of a game targeted at a black player, there's a good chance that he would not be allowed to play in the NBA anymore. I'm not saying that's definitely what would have happened, but it would have been on the table. There would be people saying that, calling for that. Now, there was some blowback from this situation. People on ESPN called him out. He apologized. So here's actually footage the next time they played after, people kind of called out him saying, you shouldn't have said that. That was inappropriate. That was wrong, whatever. And so this is at the next game where they're warming up. Here's Luka Doncic in the white, wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, by the way. You think maybe that particular game he was like, do we have to wear these? I ain't wearing that. I'll wear it tomorrow. I got to wear it now. Me, a bitch-ass white boy, I got to wear my Black Lives Matter shirt to the next game? He was thinking that on some level. And so they're warming up.
In the bubble, this was the pregame
there's Luka Doncic.
discussion that Harrell and Luka Doncic had before
He's
the
apologizing,
game.
like, hey,
and
man.
as you can
whatever.
see, Doncic, no big deal at all. As the two of them just exchanged a hug, a handshake, and some words.
You know what I noticed from that, Mike?
And that was that. That was that. Hey, man, I'm sorry I called you a bitch-ass white boy last game. And Luka Doncic is like, whatever, dude. I'm literally wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt as we speak. That's how we look at black on white racism in this country. That's what we see it as. To sit here and lie and pretend that it is comparable in any way to if this situation... Dude, if this happened in reverse, you think it would have been resolved by a pregame, mid-warm-up, 5-second hug conversation? Luka Doncic would be on an apology tour on every talk show ESPN panel in the world. He would be fined by the NBA at best and suspended and have to take like a training course or a, whatever, diversity inclusion seminar. That's the best case scenario if he's not just ousted altogether, even after he apologizes profusely. We don't see it the same way. And I'm not saying I don't understand why that is. It's obvious why that is. We understand why black on white racism is treated with much less seriousness than white on black. It's kind of the same way male on female domestic abuse is seen as much more serious than female on male domestic abuse. We just don't take it as seriously when a guy says his wife beats him as when a woman says her husband beats him. We just don't take it as seriously. There are people that would argue, you need to, but, even I'm sitting there like, look, it's not quite the same thing, all right? Like, neither one of them is good, but, if a guy tells me that his wife hit him and walks in with a black eye, I'm not going to feel the same way as if a girl says my boyfriend hit me and walks in with a black eye. You're just going to, a black guy. Then I'll be pissed. No, black eye. I'll be pissed, And we handle racism the same way. We just don't take one as seriously as the other. And there's not necessarily anything you can do about that. It's that way for a reason. It will probably be that way for a while. I don't see it changing anytime soon. But accepting it for what it is and refusing to acknowledge it when it happens are two different things. I understand why it's the way it is. I accept that it is that way and will be that way for a long time. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend it's not a thing when I see it right in front of my face. Till next time, folks. My name is Jimmy Selesky. New content on the channel every Monday through Friday. This is live from the studio. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us a like. Leave us a comment. Peace.